Today's session is about video worth a million words. And as a moderator, we have Dr. Mohak Shah. For the panelists, we have Dr. Gunjan Balu, Dr. Shruti Warke, Dr. Alpesh Kumar Rajput, Dr. Geet M. Shah, Dr. Alisha Desai. For the speakers, we have Dr. Sneha Gupta, Dr. Ritika Malik, Dr. Satyam Gupta, Dr. Romi Singh, Dr. Nikhila Sathi, Dr. Urmila
You are panelist in this.
And for the co-moderator, we have Dr. Pooja Khamar. I request everyone to please switch on your camera, unmute the mic, and over to the chairperson. Thank you.
Thank you very much. First of all, I would like to thank Dr. Partha Biswas and the scientific committee members for giving me this opportunity. These are the tough COVID times, and as we all know, this is the first ever virtual conference of the All India Ophthalmic Society. And I'm very pleased to say that it has been a huge success and the response has been tremendously well received. So without wasting further time, I think I would like to start the session. And our first talk is of Dr. Sneha Sen Gupta. She'll be presenting a novel method for the scar management. But over to you, Dr. Sneha.
Good morning, everyone. Is my screen visible?
Yes,
Yes,
Sneha, go on.
Yeah.
Sneha, audio?
Yes.
Dr. Sneha, we can't hear anything. If you can talk or...
Ma'am, the audio is not heard.
No.
मैम शेयरिंग कर रहे हैं जब वहाँ पे शेयरिंग द कंप्यूटर ऑडियो में सिलेक्ट करना पड़ता है.
Still not audible, Sneha.
So this is a
You can
case.
speak up.
The 20-year-old female presented to us post LASIK surgery, and she complained of blurred vision due to loss of flap or a button hole. Her uncorrected visual acuity was 6/60 and best corrected was 6/80 with -2.5 cylinder and 135 degrees. So we decided to treat her. These were the options available to us. The first one was PTK. It would result in larger area of ablation, excessive tissue ablation, and hyperopic shift. The second one was femtosecond assisted anterior lamellar keratotomy. So we wanted to see for some other options to customize the treatment. We did a literature search and we saw this article of topography-based removal of corneal epithelium in keratoconus, where decentered pores were treated by localizing the area and the depth of ablation. So on the Schwinn platform, we identified the cone, measured their dimensions, dynamic cyclotorsion was taken into account, and then topo-guided PTK of 20 microns was done over the thinnest area of epithelium. First, then the manual epithelium was removed, and this was followed by collagen cross-linking with a 0.1% riboflavin for 20 minutes, followed by UV radiation. So we decided to apply a similar technique here. We measured the depth. It was on anterior segment OCT. It was 145 microns. Then we went on to the PTK cam mode. The horizontal and the vertical dimensions of the scar were measured. Following that, we planned that we could tilt the axis of ablation and we could customize the ablation according to the scar. This is the decentered ablation profile on the software of Schwinn, PTK CAM software. The scar was delineated, the cyclotorsion was taken into account, and we customized the treatment according to the dimensions with minimal collateral damage. The depth was kept to be 75 microns, which prevented the over-ablation and excessive hyperopic shift. The post-operative outcome was good.
Go ahead,
Carry on.
finish it. Yeah.
So this has opened up a new dimension for customized treatment. Can be treated in following conditions. In post-PRK haze, in recurrent corneal erosions, post-viral keratitis, band-shaped keratopathy, or corneal dystrophies, the superficial ones. Thank you.
Patient.
Excellent presentation, Dr. Sneha.
Thank you,
I
sir.
think, I have seen many of these type of scars when there is some complication with the, I think, blade LASIK surgery gone wrong. There is a buttonhole, as you rightly mentioned, especially in the Steve's cornea, or if you are reusing the blades. So the take-home message is do not reuse the blades. And if you have this scar management, I think what you show is, I think the software is only available for the Schwinn. Is there any way, if we don't have the Schwinn machine, and we can do on any other machine like this? Any idea? Or what would be the mode of treating?
I will want to, like, recently we got MEL 90, Dr. Mohak. So I want to ask you, like, they showed that there is a PTK mode where you can go from 2 millimeters to 8 millimeters. So I wanted to, actually that time I wanted to discuss, but then I thought today would be a good time, whether we can do that or not in Zeiss, because if it's a 2 millimeter zone to 8 millimeter zone, then you can probably customize the treatment with Zeiss. That is what I was. Only thing is, you have, like, the decentration has to be thought about.
Yes, I think Zeiss does this pupil tracking. So I am not very actually sure that this much of decentration would be possible with the Zeiss MEL 90. I think, but what we can do, we can turn up the eye tracker, and then definitely, we can ask the patient not to move the eyes and the head. So we should have some control. I think it is possible. I have a couple of patients lined up, and I think you can also do it and let us know what happens.
Yeah,
So
because yesterday only I saw
track.
this feature of MEL 90, so I wanted to ask you.
Yeah, so far I have not treated anyone. Dr. Alisha, your views?
I think this idea. This patient would have the best treatment possible would have been a FALC. And here with this, now with the RGP, this patient is going to have excellent vision. Maybe even without an RGP, his vision is going to be good. So I think this is a fabulous thing. And I wish that all the other LASIK platforms now have this topo guided and this thing where we can customize our ablations. So even with mild keratoconus, we don't have access to a Schwinn. So it's difficult for us to do these decentered ablations. But
I think Ahmedabad should get one Schwinn now.
I think Ahmedabad needs one, yes, Schwinn.
You and Mohak can decide.
But I think
excellent. I'm going to give a try with the Zeiss MEL 90 first.
Yeah.
I think, if I'm not wrong, you have done this on some keratoconus patients as well, Dr. Fugler, right? I think you and Dr.
Yeah. So I think Dr. Ritika will present that as well for keratoconic eyes. And we recently published it as well. We have a 2-year data which shows it's stable. So that is why I was interested, because if MEL 90 can also do it, then it would broaden the horizons of this treatment. And, track like this procedure, what she showed, customized PTK is nothing extraordinary. There you don't need to think what will happen, refractive surprise and all that. There you're just regularizing the cornea. So I think if other machines can do it, that would be the best way forward.
Dr. Shruti, do you have any experience with your machine? I think you have Watson and Long, right? Is Dr. Shruti there? Yeah.
Hello. Yeah, am I audible?
We can hear you. Yes, please.
Yeah. Sorry, I joined in late. So can you repeat, Dr. Mohak, please?
Yeah. What Dr. Sneha showed was the scar management.
Yeah.
using the track one. It is basically a PTK, but the customized decentered PTK. So do you have any experience on your Boston and Lomb machine? Is there any software like that, or you have done any other way?
No, the Bosch & Lomb machine doesn't have that software to customize the PTK. You have to use the zone, and probably you can little bit decenter on the area and focus on that area and fire. But it doesn't have the customized software inbuilt. Probably they should inbuilt now.
Okay. I think that's a take-home message for every other, exam laser platform should have this software. I'll let you know regarding the Zeiss one. Okay, so now we move on to our next talk. It's by Dr. Asav Patel. He's a young dynamic cataract surgeon. He is at present working as a consultant at the Raghudeep Eye Hospital, Ahmedabad. Dr. Asav Patel, over to you.
Also, as we move forward, it's just my request. Can we please take care of the timings? Thank you.
Yes, definitely. I think we have a session of 1.5 hours, and the slot is only for 1 hour. So we can have 1 or 2 minutes extra if you don't mind.
Sure, sir.
Can you see my screen?
No, we can see you. Share your screen.
It here says open system preferences. So
yeah, so you work out. Do we have Dr. Nikhila ready with the presentation?
system.
Dr. Nikhila, you can start in the meantime. So Dr. Nikhila Satha
Sorry, I was.
Yeah. Yes, Dr. Nikhila, you are ready?
Yeah, can you see my screen?
Yes. Dr. Shruti, you can just introduce Dr. Nikhila and then she can start.
Okay. Dr. Nikhila she's working with us at Vision Next Foundation at Pune. She is a glaucoma consultant. She has done her fellowship from Pune NIO, the glaucoma long-term fellowship, and she is an excellent surgeon working with us. Over to you, Nikhila.
Thank you, ma'am. Okay, so so the 60-year-old male, previous trabeculectomy done, came for cataract surgery.
Nikhila, start your video.
Can you can't see my video?
No,
Oh. Sorry, just a minute. Now, is it visible?
No, just play it, share your screen.
I am playing it. You can't see it?
No, we can't see.
Oh, ma'am, not yet. Maybe you can stop sharing the screen and then try again.
Okay, I start. Okay. Why it's not playing?
लैपटॉप आपका एक्सटेंडेड मोड पे तो नहीं है?
I don't know why it's not playing.
Ramesh, so can you please meanwhile help Dr. Nikhila for the screen sharing?
I'm sharing कीजिए screen.
Zoom.
It
is screen share.
Yeah.
Video किधर है तेरा?
I closed it. Here. Wait 1 minute.
I think Nikhila. Yes. Okay.
Can
now
you see it now?
Yes.
Yeah, just open the video.
My video is playing on my laptop.
मैम ये ना एक्सटेंडेड मोड पे है, उसको आप डुप्लीकेट कीजिए, विंडो की दबाइए उसको। मैक का लैपटॉप है क्या आपका?
क्या?
डिस्प्ले सेटिंग में
रमेश,
जाइए।
प्लीज कैन आप थोड़ा जोर से बात बोलेंगे क्या? वी आर नॉट एबल टू हियर यू.
ये आपका लैपटॉप एक्सटेंडेड मोड पे है मैम, आपको सामने प्ले हो रहा है, इधर नहीं हो रहा है, तो उसको डुप्लीकेट मोड करना पड़ेगा। डिस्प्ले सेटिंग में जाइए।
कैसे? कहाँ पे जाना है?
लैपटॉप मैकबुक है आपका?
नहीं, डेल।
तो डेल क्या है, उसको विंडो पी दबाइए।
क्या बना?
Ma'am, please
Window.
press the window key.
विंडो की।
Yeah.
उस पर डुप्लीकेट का ऑप्शन आ रहा होगा, उस पर क्लिक कीजिए।
Is there an option of duplicate?
किधर? डुप्लीकेट।
डुप्लीकेट का ऑप्शन आ रहा है मैम,
आपको दिख रहा है अभी मेरा?
नहीं.
आपका विंडो आ रहा है, बट आपका फाइल नजर आ रहा है, प्ले नहीं है नजर आ रहा।
ओके, आई फाउंड दिस डुप्लीकेट थिंग। उसके बाद क्या करना है सर?
Click on that.
No, it's just like so many options.
Okay. I think Dr. Asav is ready. So, Dr. Nikhil, just
Okay.
work it out.
Sorry. Yeah.
I'll ask Dr. No problem. Dr. Asav?
Yes.
Just-
Yes,
Yeah,
I'm trying to
right
share
now.
my screen.
क्या करूं? Yes.
Dr. Nikhila, we'll help you offline.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Dr. Asav? Easy. Asav,
Yes.
start sharing. Yeah.
Yes, right.
Okay, fine. Yeah.
So, good morning, everyone. Can you listen my voice?
Yes, sir.
Go ahead.
Can you listen my voice?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Okay. So, good morning, everyone. So, this is a case of 27-year-old female who has left a unilateral posterior polar cataract with a pre-existing defect. So, her right eye is within normal limit, and this is a Lensex OCT picture. Showing a pre-existing defect in the posterior capsule with some lens matter already in the anterior vitreous. So once we diagnose the PC defect, our aim is to prevent further extension and nucleus drop. And for that, we find femtodelineation very useful because it enhances the safety in the posterior polar cataract. So the femtosecond laser is programmed to create 3 cylinders within the lens, and which results in sharply demarcated layers. The number, size, and depth of the cylinders can be controlled by the surgeon using the live anterior segment OCT. The multiple layer of the nucleus act as a mechanical cushions that protect each layer as it is being removed. The nucleus is then removed without performing a hydro procedure. And starting from the innermost layer, each of the sharply delineated layer is emulsified from inside out within the cushion of the outer layer. So we have used the low parameters for the phaco as we didn't want too much inflation and deflation in the globe. We started with IOP of 20 and then increased to 40. We are also using the low flow rate of only 20 while doing a phaco. Because of the low flow rate, everything happens slowly and happens under our control. At the end of the nucleus removal, a thick and uniform epinuclear plate cushion remains. So because of the sharp vertical wall created by the laser circumferentially, the epinuclear cushion is easily removed using a combination of the phaco probe and bimanual irrigation and aspiration. So bimanual irrigation aspiration enables the maintenance of a closed chamber at all the times and also makes subincisional epinuclear removal easier. So we can now see the pre-existing PC defect. So ultimately, we were able to preserve the pre-existing defect. So now what next? 3-piece IOL in sulcus, single piece in bag, or toric IOL. So with our experience of pediatric cataract surgery, we decided to convert this posterior capsule defect into posterior capsular axis. So which will give it a strong margin. So keep changing the hands from one side to another for better ergonomic comfort, and use of micro incision instruments really helps. So you may have to change your hands multiple times while doing a PCCC. And we are trying to encompass the plaque also, so patient will have a relatively clear visual axis. So finally, we were able to achieve a strong margin after completing posterior capsular axis in this case. So this is a PCCC margin. So this is a strong PCCC margin. So it is imperative that we make sure that there is no vitreous disturbance, which fortunately was not present in this case. And finally, now we have a situation where we have a strong anterior capsular axis and posterior axis. So this is a high astigmatism correcting T7 IOL. So the toric IOL was injected slowly and nicely in the back, and we used the Varion to align the IOL axis. Of course, we didn't go below the IOL to remove the visco. So this is the end picture and reconfirming the vitreous disturbance at the end. And this is a final picture. So this is the end. So this is a picture of a 6 months follow-up. Thank you.
Just stop sharing your screen. That's an excellent presentation, an excellent way to manage the pre-existing PC defect, Dr. Asaf. Well
Thank
done.
you very much.
I think we have Dr. Gunjan and Dr. Alpesh Rajput here. So I'd like to have their views. First, Dr. Gunjan. Dr. Gunjan, you know, she's a very young and dynamic cataract surgeon and a glaucoma specialist. Dr. Gunjan, anything different would you have done? And what are your views on this case management?
Hello.
Yeah. Yes, Dr.
So
Gunjan.
we don't have femto in our setting. So what we do, is we do just a gentle hydro delineation, and then with viscoelastic, we separate epinuclear plate from the remaining cortical material, and then we also use bimanual. But majority of cases with gentle hydro delineation, we usually don't encounter any major PC dent or PC defect. We can implant an IOL in the back. Of course, we are not doing PCCC because we are not very much experienced with that. But we usually implant IOL in the sulcus.
Okay. Dr. Alpesh, how many cases you get for this PCR management and nucleus drop and all? We'd like to have your opinion.
Yeah, we love to get those cases, but nowadays, like Dr. Asaf has done very excellent job. So we are very helpless. We are not getting much of cases like this. Few times we are getting the picking pupil after the months or 3 months. So these are the patients we have to manage very carefully. What he did is he used the tricot very good amount. And the worry about in our case, the main thing is which visco you have to use for continuous doing the PCC. Because if the visco is going downward, in post-op stage, there is a chance of intraocular pressure high, and we are using two or three times triamcinolone. So again, that triamcinolone crystals can go in a trabecular meshwork, and these are the young guys. So it can lead to increase in intraocular pressure. That is my first concern. And one more thing, it's very beautifully he has managed the anterior compartment. So in what we vitreous surgeon do, we just keep a pars plana and did it from the behind PCC. And remove the core do the core vitrectomy just behind the PCC. So that is what we do in pediatric cases, in few complicated cases. Thank you.
Dr. Asaf?
Yeah.
Yes,
please, Dr. Sudhi, go ahead.
Yeah, the first, I would like to ask which instrument you used for the PCC. Was that a vitrector?
No, it is not the detector. It is a micro instrument. We have two. One is a Greisefer forceps and another is the epsilon forceps. So that forceps we use for doing the PCCC.
Okay, so it has a vacuum to hold the flap.
No, it doesn't have vacuum. It is a purely mechanical forceps.
Okay.
Yes, mechanical forceps. And with that only we can, it is a spring-like mechanism. So with that only we do the PCCC.
Dr. Asav, is it a 23 gauge or a 25 gauge you use?
No, these we are doing from the side port only, 1 millimeter inch.
Okay, but size has to be decided. No, epsilon make either 23 or 25. So that is why I'm asking. When Greisefer also.
Yes, sir. This is the 23, sir.
Okay, so this is the same VR instrument we are using now?
Yes, exactly. Right, sir. Right, sir.
Okay. Thank you.
My question
Okay,
to Dr. Asav is what?
surgery.
Yeah, please. What is your PCR rate with this femto delineation technique, Dr. Asav? And what was the axis and other parameters you use particularly for this femtosecond machine, Lensex?
We have reported 4.4% PCR rate with this technique, which is better than the 6 to 8% of other manual techniques. And parameters we use was 4.6 millimeter Rexis size, 5.5 millimeter of outer diameter of the cylinder, and 10 millijoule of this laser energy, and 500 micron offset from the posterior capsule.
Okay, 500 micron offset, that's the keyword. And,
yes,
and
right.
What are your views? How is it better than the manual technique? I mean, a lot of people, don't have this access to the femtosecond laser.
Yes, right. With with this technique, we can completely eliminate the need for any kind of hydro procedure, and we can create those multiple cylinders inside the nucleus that act as a cushion. So one by one, when we remove these cylinders, we can totally have this hydraulic pressure building on the PC. We can totally avoid. So chances of the PCR are significantly less in this technique. That is what we believe.
Dr. Pooja, your view?
I want to ask, like, everyone can comment on it, because I know I saw your work, but when you do a laser, like when you're doing a flax procedure to create a Rexis, you're increasing the intraocular pressure. So don't you think if it's a pre-existing defect, you'll have a nucleus drop to...
Yes, right. That is a concern that these bubbles created by the femto laser can have a lot of effect. But we are basically using a slow energy, so it creates a small bubbles, and these small bubbles are really manageable in our technique. So we are not reporting any, we are not experiencing any such kind of pressure on the posterior capsule.
I would like to add also, PPCs are very young.
Dr. Gunjan, then Alisha. Yeah, fine.
Do you have any experience with hard cataract, like brown cataract? Because most of posterior polar are softer.
Yes, right. In that case, we use higher lens laser energy if in case of there is nuclear sclerosis also there. And in all the PCR cases that we have done, we have occurred, we could able to convert all of them into PCCC and finally able to implant IOL in the bag in all the cases.
One last question.
And do you do
Dr.
PCC
Alisha.
for all patients, or?
No, not the all patient, not the all patient. Only in case of PCR happens, then only we do PCCC. Or if there is a pre-existing PC defect. Otherwise, we don't do PCCC. This patient was 27-year-old.
Dr. Alisha?
Yes, so I was going to mention the same point, that most of these PPCs come at a younger age. Because they come at a younger age, we don't need too much laser energy to sort of delineate. And or delineate, or in our machine, for example, we cut, then we don't need too much laser energy. Because we don't use too much laser energy, the bubbles that are produced are very less. Also, after femto, the rule is that once you remove the Rexis, you're supposed to burp the bubble, which is what I think Pooja was talking about, that may cause some amount of pressure. Yeah, so that can definitely occur in a harder cataract where there are larger bubbles. But usually with these PPCs, they are luckily younger patients who present to us, and mostly, and the laser energy used is less. So usually we don't have an issue.
Okay, perfect. We can have all the questions later. Now, next, I would like to invite Dr. Romi Singh. She is an associate consultant at the CFS Agra. She has done her DOMS from the Rayo Sitaku, done the DNB from the Justin Etral at Dahod. And I'm proud to say that she has done the fellowship at our place in refractive surgery, and she has been a brilliant cataract and refractive surgeon. Over to you, Dr. Romi. Her topic is ocular comprehensive eye care delivery system.
Good morning, sir. My pleasure to have it.
So please speak up so we can hear you and share the screen.
My screen is visible.
Yeah, but but your voice is not loud enough. So kindly go closer to the mic.
Now my screen is visible. I'm audible.
Not exactly, not loud enough.
Am I audible right now?
You are audible, but still not loud enough.
Play the video.
Now it's fine.
Okay, start the video.
Dr. Singh, I'm sorry, but you're not audible. Maybe you can try by being closer to the mic.
No, not audible, Dr. Romi.
My voice is not audible.
Or if you
No.
have headphones around, you can put that. Maybe that can help.
ये शेयरिंग किए होंगे तो ऑप्शन आया होगा ऑडियो का, कंप्यूटर ऑडियो का सिलेक्ट करना पड़ता है।
रमेश भाई आप थोड़ा जोर से बोलिए so that you know
कह रहा हूँ
उनको
मैम,
सुनाई देगा।
शेयर जो किया ये वीडियो, उसमें जो ऑप्शन आता है शेयरिंग के बाद में ऑडियो का,
Hello.
उस पर क्लिक करना
Now
पड़ता है।
I'm audible.
Yes, much better, ma'am.
Okay. So now we'll continue from starting.
Yeah, start the
Yeah.
video from the main.
Okay.
Yeah. Not audible. Dr. Romi is still not audible.
रमेश भाई आप एक ऑप्शन बता रहे थे ना फॉर दी ऑडियो।
जब शेयरिंग करते हैं वीडियो को तो वहाँ पर शेयरिंग में ऑप्शन आता है,
सॉरी
शेयरिंग के समय में ऑप्शन आता है कंप्यूटर ऑडियो के लिए, शेयरिंग द ऑडियो।
Dr. Romi, I think we are not able to hear you. I think you can stop the screen sharing right now. Dr. Nikhila, you are ready?
Hello.
Yeah, Dr. Nikhila, you can
Ah,
continue till
okay,
the time Dr. Romi works out.
Okay. Can you see my screen now?
Yes, ma'am.
यस
Okay.
Oh.
So my case is a toric IOL in a post-trabeculectomy post-pterygium case. This trabeculectomy was done 5 years ago. It's a good trap. And pterygium surgery was done 1 year back. So we start with marking the this for a toric IOL because the patient had about 5 diopters of cylinder.
पिछली बार भी आपका भी नहीं ऑडिबल था शुरू में कुछ किया था आपने शायद ईयरफोन लगाया है
So we don't want to touch the bleb. I tried using a Simcoe to avoid making the second side port because I didn't want to disturb the area of the bleb. But I had difficulty removing the subincisional cortex, so I made a second side port to facilitate that cortex removal. Sometimes we have to go against the original plan. We put in a toric IOL, which was calculated using the Barrett online toric calculator, and the axis of orientation was 94 degrees. We have to thoroughly wash away the visco so that we can avoid a rotation of the IOL, which has to be aligned post-op, and B, blockage of the trabeculectomy site by any viscoelastic. Patient was doing very well. Vision is 6.9 and IOP on last visit was 14 millimeters of mercury.
Very nice presentation, Dr. Nikhila. I think we have Dr. Gunjan. She is also a glaucoma specialist, so we'd like to have her views on this. Dr. Gunjan.
Yes, this was a very wonderful surgery, very nicely done. And the
Thank
idea
you.
of using Simcoe was good because anywhere, anything what we do near bleb, it always disturbs the bleb. Even if there is overhydration, it disturbs the bleb. So better you do with a coaxial or a Simcoe. But most of time, as you said, we have to do another side port. And the thing is, after 5 years, if the bleb is functioning well, I think someone has done a very good AGS.
Yes.
And what if the patient has any other trauma or anything like that? Because pterygium one-eyed.
Yes, ma'am. No, the other eye has glaucomatous optic atrophy. It was like that when he
Okay.
presented. And this eye was having pterygium, having this already bleb. So we planned pterygium surgery first so that we could reduce the cylinder, but he still had
-5
5.
is yes. But
Yeah.
bleb may
Bleb
cause
may be contributing.
may be contributing.
Yes, yes, ma'am.
The thing is that whenever you are doing phaco or any cataract surgery after trap, if the bleb is functioning, you have to be very careful. Avoid excessive manipulation, and preferably do post-op steroids. You should be using it cautiously also.
Ma'am, I also read that we should be using it for a longer time, like 6 weeks, to prevent post-cataract surgery, the flare. So
Bleb anything, see,
yeah, I
any
want to-
inflammatory mediators which goes to bleb, it causes fibrosis. So anyhow, most of people are using 4 weeks or 6 weeks, but don't go for aggressive steroid use.
Okay, ma'am.
Dr. Nikhila, I had one point to make.
Yes, ma'am.
It's an excellent surgery. However, I saw that you did the marking intraoperatively.
No, ma'am. I had done it in OPD, pre-operatively.
Yeah, that is the most important thing for a toric IOL.
Yes, ma'am. Because after I give the block, obviously there will be some cyclotorsion. It was not seen, I think, in the video. I kind of edited that part out, but I just enhanced the marking before surgery.
Yeah, because you know that for every degree of IOL rotation, there's a 3.3% loss of astigmatic correction. Yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
Any other questions? Okay, then. Is Dr. Urmil there?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, Urmil.
I hope you can see my video, see me as well as hear me.
Yes, and as we all know, Urmil is, going to speak from the car. I think he's on way. He's a very busy person. He's an excellent retinal surgeon, but he's so busy that even today, he has to present from the car.
I think leg pulling should be kept for the meetings in person.
No leg pulling, Urmil. Okay, Dr. Urmil Shah is a very good friend of mine, and he's the director of the Bharti Eye Clinic. And he's a very nice vitreoretinal surgeon. Over to you, Dr. Urmil. Your talk is posterior segment trauma, Pandora's box.
Dr. Shah, before we proceed, I just have a quick message for Dr. Romi. I've sent her a message regarding the contact person for helping her out with the video. I would request Dr. Romi to please check her chat. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Shah.
Shall I share my screen?
Yeah.
Is my presentation visible?
Yes, go ahead.
Yes, okay. So thank you, Dr. Mohak, and the organizing and the scientific committee for this talk. So we'll be talking on posterior segment trauma. Now, as you know, this is a Pandora's box. I cannot cover the entire segment of posterior segment trauma in 4 minutes, but I'll try to do justice with a couple of videos. So we'll go straight away into the cases. So male 32, mechanic, has a trauma 3 days back, presents with a vision of 1 meter in the left eye. Evaluation shows a vitreous hemorrhage with intraocular foreign body. There's a corneal tear and a cataract. So at the start of the surgery, this video is visible, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So at the start of the surgery, I have taken 2 sutures. There was a near mature cataract, so did a lensectomy and preserved the anterior capsule. After clearing the vitreous hemorrhage, what basically struck me was that the proximity of the foreign body to the fovea. So as you can see, the foreign body is just embedded at the posterior pole. It's just embedded at the posterior pole. So I actually have to pull it out with a forceps and a magnet. It's inside the arcade, so it's pretty scary about the choroidal bleed coming onto the fovea. I remove the foreign body, induce PVD. Do induce PVD, clear the vitreous at the impact site. And there it is. Do ILM staining and the peeling of the ILM to make sure there is no residual epiretinal membrane formation post-operatively. Make sure you peel all around, trim the blood clots, do a good laser around the perforation site and fill in C3F8 gas. So later on, the patient undergoes a secondary IUL and has a vision of 618. So I think we'll take cases together at the end of the talk. So I'll go to the second case. 17-year-old male, history is unknown. He says he got a history 1 week back while working, but unknown. Visual acuity PL/PR, presence with a corneal tear and endophthalmitis. CT scan shows a 8x3 millimeter large intraocular foreign body. So we have to suture first the corneal tear. You can see there are membranes and there is hypopion. So do a good AC wash. Do a lensectomy to clear out the lens exudates, the mature cataract. Now we are working with limited view, so please pardon the video quality because of the cornea. There's a large foreign body that is sitting just in the mid-vitreous. So clear the foreign body from the vitreous, put PFCL. Have to make a huge scleral tunnel to remove the foreign body using a handshake technique. And it's a ragged foreign body. Suture the scleral tunnel. Again, induce PVD. Clear off the vitreous hemorrhage, the impact site. Do 360-degree barrage laser and put in silicone oil. Now this patient is as of now 1.5 months post-op, is aphakic, has a best corrected visual acuity of 2/5 to 3 meters, and we are planning a silicone oil removal plus or minus IUL implantation. And going on to the last case for the posterior segment trauma, a male 23 presents with a history of blunt trauma, vision hand movement in the right eye, shows traumatic cataract with phacodonesis with a giant retinal tear with grade D PVR. So this was a pretty scary surgery. So initially I had thought I'll put a 240 belt buckle. Now, as you can see, the eye is pretty soft. The intraocular pressure was around 4 or 5 because of long-standing trauma. Make scleral tunnels, put in the 240. Again, do a lensectomy because there's a cataract, there's a anticapsular membrane, there's phacodonesis. And there's a lot of PVR, almost a closing funnel RD. So first remove the peripheral vitreous. Then try to induce a plane from where I can induce the PVD. Now, because it's a young male and a blunt trauma, PVD is not induced, which normally should be in a case of giant retinal tear. So now, as you can see, I've induced the PVD, got a surgical plane where I can work. And there comes the rest of the membranes and the posterior vitreous. Clear it out. You can see as soon as the vitreous is cleared, the mobility of the retina increases. So now we have to be careful we don't catch the retina into our cutter. Now we use a Tano scraper or a diamond duster to roll out gently the retina. This also helps in identifying the PVR membranes for us to peel. So peeling out the membrane so that the stiffness of the retina goes away. Do a ILM staining with BBG and put in PFCL. Now the concept of ILM peeling is that the peeling of the ILM increases the relaxation of the retina, so that's easier for the retina to flatten out. And of course, it reduces the epiretinal membrane formation in the postoperative period. As you keep on filling the PFCL, the retina needs to be rolled out and ironed out more and more. So again, just massage out the retina, then assess for the relaxing retinectomy. So this part of the retina is, I'll just wrap it up, 30 seconds more. So do a relaxing retinectomy. There it is. do a base shaving, do endo laser, and put in silicone oil. So now the patient is aphakic, has a visual acuity of 3 meters, but unfortunately this was in 2020 before the pandemic. Now I've lost the patient up in the follow-up period. So the take-home message would be that it is a challenging emergency. Multiple stage surgeries are needed and has to be counseled. Visual prognosis needs to be counseled. We have to involve multiple subspecialty surgeons to work, like a corneal surgeon has to suture. We may need a retinal surgeon along with a glaucoma surgeon, or if there's a cataract surgeon that can do a good cataract surgeon. And in cases of road traffic accidents with posterior segment dropper, systemic management cannot be forgotten. Thank you.
Really, that was the Pandora's box, Dr. Urmil. Excellent presentation. And being a cataract and refractive surgeon, these surgeries always look challenging and beautiful to us. I'd like to have the views of Dr. Alpesh, who is also himself the leading retina vitreous surgeon. Dr. Alpesh, how you have done anything differently or any tips on this?
No, surgery done by Urmil is very excellent. The only thing we keep gap between the two surgeries. If cornea is involved, generally we do it after 2 to 3 weeks to heal the cornea and to get the better visibility. He has used PFCL, triamcinolone to stain the vitreous. The only thing for the GRT case is the last case what he has shown. He has used the PFCL very, very late, other than the what I am using. I try to do the debulk the vitreous, then use the triamcinolone to restain the vitreous again. Then after that, I use the dye to see the any PVR membrane or an immature membrane. So it's better to use the dye in case of any GRT or a chronic RD patient, because we can easily visualize with the any dye. And later on, we can stain also the ILM with the brilliant blue. So it's better to remove the ILM, what he has done excellent job. And we will get the much better visual outcome, at least more than 660 in any case, any kind of GRT or a traumatic case. So that is what we can do in based in our hand. All cases don't go so smoothly, what videos has shown. Many cases has a GRT is flapping inside and it can redetach. Many times, even with the silicone oil, which are damaged very high amount, there is a chance of chronic hypotony. Whatever we do, in few cases, we try to fill with the heavy silicone oil. That is generally we are filling with the 1,000, 1,300, 1,500 silicone oil. In other cases like a trauma or a younger case with the very advanced PVR or a GRT, we try to fill it with the heavy silicone oil. That is a 5,000 centi-stick. So this is what it did the belt buckling. That is again a debatable. Many times we don't do belt buckling because we are already doing the retinectomy. So belt buckling may not be useful in those times. But that we will know only after the surgery or during the surgery. That's again a particular surgeon's difference. So that's kudos to Dr. Urmil. Very nicely done. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, Urmil.
No, I agree with his comments. Retinal surgery, I think, like any eye surgery, there is a little bit of a surgeon's preference. So I agree with Dr. Alpesh's comments, and definitely we can improve further in our surgeries by taking tips from all our panelists.
I think Dr. Satyam, do you have anything to comment or ask anything could have been done differently as you handled with lot of even oculoplastic cases and road traffic accident cases as well?
So the surgery is very well done. See, we deal with the anterior segment foreign body removals, and so posterior segment is basically a referral for us as always, and is very well done by Dr. Desai, and Dr. Alpesh has very well commented.
Okay, excellent presentation, Urmil. I think you have done a fantastic job. We are really proud of you and Dr. Alpesh, whatever you are doing for the retina, because it's the most challenging. Because many of the times, in terms of the visual quality, patients are not that satisfied. But ultimately, what you are doing is a big job. So we really thank you. You are like a lifesaver for us, anterior surgeons.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, I think we can move to the next talk. Next talk is by Dr. Satyam Gupta, ocular myasthenia gravis solved. Dr. Satyam Gupta is a consultant at the SK Hospital, Bareilly. He has done his DOMS from the Raya Sitapur and DNB from the Dashti Nethralaya, Dahod. and he has also done his fellowship in the pediatric ophthalmology and the oculoplasty from the Tassim College, Lahore. Over to you, Dr. Satyam.
Is my screen visible?
Yes.
And if I'm audible?
Yes, you're audible.
Okay. So, good morning, everyone. At the very first, I'll want to thank AIS for giving me this virtual platform to share my experience regarding ocular myasthenia gravis. To the best of it, we have June as the Myasthenia Gravis Awareness Month, and so we have AIS in this month. Myasthenia is an autoimmune disorder characterized by weakness and fatigability of skeletal muscles. When symptoms are isolated to ocular muscles, it is referred to as ocular myasthenia. Coming straight to the diagnosis, ocular myasthenia is a clinical diagnosis. For a definitive diagnosis, antibody test should be positive. But since 50% cases of ocular myasthenia are seronegative, so these patients should undergo invasive tests like neostigmine and or single fiber electromyography, which is actually the gold standard test. I-SPEC test is one of the most commonly performed OP diagnostic procedure that doesn't require any special equipment. These are the probable mechanisms of I-SPEC test: reduced metabolic rate and metabolic demand, the decreased acetylcholine esterase activity, and the reduced amount of circulating acetylcholine receptor antibodies.
Not audible. The video is also not playing.
I-SPEC is longer duration can increase the chances of cold necrosis as well as false negative test, as it can cause decreased contractility of muscles. An improvement of greater than 2 mm is regarded as positive. 4 mm improvement is seen in this case. ICE test has a high negative predictive value of 94% and help us to rule out myasthenia-related ptosis. If performed properly, it is associated with no complications. Neostigmine is a pharmacological test for myasthenia. It is useful in cases of diplopia without ptosis and in children. Longer duration of action allows measurement of ocular alignment. We have a case series of 13 patients who presented to us with diplopia and diagnosed as myasthenia on neostigmine test. Anticholinesterase agents like neostigmine, pyridostigmine, and physostigmine inhibit the enzyme acetylcholine esterase that degrades the acetylcholine in the synaptic cleft. So acetylcholine is not degraded, and with successive nerve impulses, its concentration in the cleft increases, due to which the receptors over the wider area of the end plate are covered by acetylcholine. Thus, sufficient postsynaptic nerve potential is generated and the muscle strength is restored. So these drugs improve the ptosis and diplopia in ocular myasthenia patients. This is another case of 65-year-old normotensive and non-diabetic male who presented to us with diplopia and ptosis in both eyes. Neostigmine test is planned. Before performing the test, all biochemical and hematological parameters needs to be evaluated and should be within normal limits. Pre-test measurements of MRD1, MRD2, PF, range of duction, and deviation using PRISM alternate cover test is done and recorded. The test is performed with electrocardiographic monitoring under the supervision of anesthetist, as there are chances of severe systemic side effects of neostigmine.
Your voice is breaking down.
5 minutes. Okay, the patient has no movement. Test
Dr. Satyam, we are unable to hear you. The video is also paused. Are you still there, Dr. Satyam?
Dr. Mohak, are you able to hear me right now?
Yeah, now I can hear you. Can you just start when you were injecting the news?
Okay,
I think
okay,
you have
okay.
to start from that point because we could not
Okay,
hear you
okay,
or see
okay.
anything.
Just give me a
Yeah.
minute. Okay.
Yeah. Still it is tough, I guess. I think we can have the discussion, no problem, Dr. Satyam. I think it was a wonderful thing because the ocular myasthenia to diagnose is always a challenge. I would like to, hear the views from the panelist. Anyone?
I think right now I'm there.
Yeah. Okay, go ahead. Just the point where you were injecting.
Yeah, but actually I cannot forward that video till that point.
Okay, that.
So basically, I'll start from the point where we're injecting that. So this test is performed with electrocardiographic monitoring under the supervision of anesthetist, as there are chances of severe systemic side effects of neostigmine. After preloading the patient with 0.6 milligram of atropine to avoid sinus bradycardia due to excessive cholinergic stimulation, a 2 milligram test dose of neostigmine is administered intravenously. If no response and no side effects are noted after 5 minutes, remainder 8 milligram drug is injected in 2 milligram increments at every 5 minutes. If the patient has objective improvement in the above mentioned parameters or has severe side effects, the test is to be aborted. It is very important to note that feeling stronger by patient is not considered as a positive test. Note the clinical improvement in ptosis and ocular alignment in the similar overdose of neostigmine can cause skeletal muscle paralysis due to persistent depolarization, resulting in cholinergic crisis, which is actually a life-threatening condition treated with atropine and supportive artificial respiration. Management can be done with acetylcholinesterase inhibitors like pyridostigmine, which is the drug of choice, neostigmine, immunosuppression with steroids, and immunomodulators like azathioprine, mycophenolate mofetil, cyclosporin, and tacrolimus. Plasmapheresis and intravenous immunoglobulin are given in cases of refractory disease, crisis, and when planning for surgery. Thymectomy has benefit in the active stage of the disease in generalized myasthenia, positive acetylcholine receptor antibodies. Thus, myasthenia is a clinical diagnosis. 50% cases of ocular myasthenia are seronegative. Single fiber EMG is though a gold standard test, but owing to its limited availability, ICE test and neostigmine test will serve the purpose in most of the cases. Thank you.
Very nice, Dr. Satyam. Very nice. I think Dr. Romi, I would like to ask Dr. Romi to ask you a few questions regarding the same. Dr. Romi, you there?
I think Dr. Romi's mic is muted. Dr. Singh, if you can hear us, can you please unmute your mic?
Yeah, we also wanted to check whether hers is working or not.
Yeah.
Yes, Dr. Romi.
Yeah. Hello. I
Yes.
want to ask Dr. Satyam that whether in any peripheral hospital we can go for eye test as a basic test, because there is no availability of EEG in these places and patient is not willing to travel to the far places. And even neostigmine test is a bit, it's a pharmacological test that is not always positive. So we can go for eye test as a basic test.
Yeah. See, what happens is that pharmacological testing is generally not recommended if you are not working into a tertiary care hospital. Because what happens is that we need to have an anesthetic to get it done, because sometimes very serious side effects of sinus bradycardia happens to a patient. Regarding eyes test, what I prefer in my practice is that every patient, if you are suspecting myasthenia presenting to you with ptosis, should undergo eyes test. The problem happens with the patient who is not presenting with ptosis, the patient who has only diplopia. Because eyes test has a peculiarity that if you keep the ice pack for more than 2 minutes, see between 2 to 4 minutes, a lot of literature says that placing the ice for 2 to 4 minutes will improve the ocular movements also. But this is not the case in every situation. Sometimes what happens that placing the ice for 2 to 4 minutes will decrease the contractility of the muscles and will yield a false negative test. So eyes test should be done. It is the primary test that should be done in a peripheral center where you don't have an availability of anesthetist first. And more important thing is that neostigmine test can not be done in seronegative cases where we don't have acetylcholine receptor antibodies. But eyes test is seen to be positive in most of the cases, because in spite of acting over the over decreasing the antibodies, it also works by improving the acetylcholine and decreasing the acetylcholine esterase activity and improving the availability of acetylcholine in the synaptic cleft. So I think you should go for eyes test.
Dr. Alisha, you have anything to add?
No, doctor, I was just wondering, you said that if neostigmine test cannot be done if the patient is antibody negative.
Yeah, seronegative. Yeah, seronegative patient should not go for neostigmine test.
Oh, why is that, sir?
This neostigmine is acting over acetylcholine esterase, right? So what is happening that acetylcholine esterase is decreasing the amount of acetylcholine available in synaptic cleft, right? So if antibodies are not there, the antibodies are not there, means normal transmission is going on. The disease is not for the receptor blockage by antibody.
But you also said that only 50% are receptor positive.
Yeah, only 50% of ocular myasthenic patients are seropositive.
Right.
But 90% of the patients with ocular myasthenia converts to general myasthenia over a period of 2 years. So what we advise a patient of myasthenia who is seronegative during the first visit, we advise him to get his or her antibody test every 6 to 12 months.
Okay.
Because most of the patient converts to seropositivity over this period of time.
It would also matter that maybe the antibody amount of antibody is too little for us to catch in the blood. And so
that
maybe means for diagnosis, sometimes we might need the myasthenia even for a seronegative.
A minimum titer is required. Yeah, minimum titer is required to detect them. And and there is one more point regarding antibody test, is that generally we'll advise anti-acetylcholine receptor antibodies. But there are two more important antibodies. First is anti-MuSK antibody. That is positive in 8% of the patients of ocular myasthenia. And another antibody is low density lipoprotein receptor related protein 4. That is also positive in most of the cases of ocular myasthenia. So we should go for these all three antibodies.
Thank you.
Hello. Yeah, I have one question, Dr. Satyam.
Yeah.
Yeah. How do you prognosticate? Hello. How do you prognosticate the case, or which are the cases you need to start the systemic steroid, and how do you monitor? And some cases we are advising thymectomy. I think around moderate to severe case of the myasthenia.
Yes.
Or you do all cases as a thymectomy.
No,
Is
sir.
it like that?
See, sir, thymectomy has a very clear-cut indication.
Okay.
First, you have to do thymectomy in patients who demonstrate a thymoma in CT thorax. First.
Okay.
Second, thymectomy should be done in the active stage of the disease. That is initial 5 to 7 years of the patients who are acetylcholine receptor antibody positive and presenting with generalized myasthenia. Patients with ocular myasthenia are not benefited by thymectomy because patients who are related to thymus and presenting with myasthenia are generally presenting with generalized weakness of the body. So patients with generalized myasthenia with antibody positivity, that too in the active stage of disease, initial 5 to 7 years, are benefited. 10% patients, the literature says 10% of the patients are the patients who are benefited out of thymectomy.
Okay. Sorry to interrupt, but I think we have less time. We have 2 more speakers to undergo. We can have it if we get the time. Dr. Pooja, over to you.
Next, we would like to invite Dr. Ritika. She's a fellow in cornea and refractive services at Narayan Nethralaya. She works extensively in management of keratoconus and other corneal conditions. So she's going to be showing an interesting video. We just spoke about few minutes back about how we can do a customized cross-linking for the patients. Over to you, Dr. Ritika.
Thank you, ma'am. So is my video visible?
No, Ritika, you need to still go ahead and play the video.
Okay. I am playing the video. Is it visible now?
First play the video and then share the screen. Stop sharing. First play the video and then share the screen.
Okay. Is it visible now?
Yes, go ahead.
Right.
Have no financial interest. Corneal collagen cross-linking has been proven to cause stabilization of keratoconus and has got FDA approval in April 2016. But the big question which haunts all of us is, what about the quality of vision and life? If we do a textbook survey of the treatment options, it provides us a variety of options which will help in stabilizing the progression of keratoconus. But the question is there nothing we can do about the visual quality? Topo-guided photorefractive keratectomy requires a minimal corneal thickness of 450 microns. The procedure had good visual outcomes. However, its limiting factor was the thinnest pachymetry. The Cretan protocol ablated 50 microns of the central cornea and hence works better for central cones. When people in different geographical areas have customized their lifestyle based on topography, why should we treat all keratoconus the same? Isn't it time to apply our clinical skills for customization of treatment? We know the cones have different sizes and shapes. So, our research question was, is there any way we can achieve visual outcomes comparable to topo-guided PRK? Is there any way to localize and decenter the zone of ablation? Well, now there is. Introducing TREC. TREC stands for Topography Guided Removal of Epithelium in Keratoconus followed by collagen cross-linking. Planning a topo-guided treatment in the Schwind-Amaris platform. The offset of the cone is measured from the pupillary center from the anterior tangential curvature map. followed by measuring the long and short axis of the cone. The ablation depth is set at a maximum of 20 microns, more than thinnest corneal epithelium thickness, measured by an anterior segment OCT. All this is done on the PTK custom ablation module. Intraoperatively, after identification of the cone, a topo-guided PTK is done over the thinnest pachymetry along with a 20 microns of stromal ablation. Next, the epithelium over the rest of the cornea, up to 8 millimeters in diameter, is manually scraped, followed by accelerated cross-linking. There was a significant improvement in post-operative, uncorrected as well as corrected visual acuity, and the procedure had a good safety profile with reliable results time after time. Other applications are Intacs, followed by topo-guided removal of epithelium in keratoconus. We can use it to regularize the cornea post-Intacs, keeping in mind the ablation zone does not overlap the epithelium over the ring. This gives the patients much better visual outcomes than the Intacs alone. With TREC, therefore, we have better epithelial regularization with additional advantage of minimizing the stromal ablation. The climb to true patient customization is finally here.
Excellent presentation, Dr. Riddhi. I think this could be a game changer because, we get a lot of keratoconus patients and the real challenge is the visual rehabilitation. So along if the patient of keratoconus can even achieve, I would say 6/12 or better, then it's a huge achievement. And I think I would like to congratulate you and all of your team at the Narayana Netralaya for doing this successfully. Now we want you to try to, develop these on other machines like Dr. Pooja said on Zeiss and other platforms. I would really like to have those feedbacks. Dr.
Right.
Pooja.
Definitely. As I said, now we have one more machine which probably will help us customize. So let's see and get back to you on it. So maybe in another 3 to 4 months.
Yes. Dr. Alisha, your views on that?
No, it's amazing. If we can do this, we can get excellent vision. And for C3R, the minimum thickness we do keep as 400, right?
Ritika, you can go ahead and answer.
So it's not just that. We have a customized calculator, which we have developed in Narayana Netralaya.
Right.
So it's an NXT UVA calculator. So if we are falling below the 400 micron zone, so epithelium off, we put it in the calculator. For example, if we have a patient who has a 390 micron TCT, and we remove the epithelium of 50 microns from the epithelial map, and we are left with 340 microns. So we put it in a calculator. It's available as a QR code or a URL, which we put it on a smartphone. And that gives us like a 3 milliwatt or a 9 milliwatt protocol with a 0.1% and a 0.2% riboflavin concentration. So around 340 microns, we will do like 7.5 minutes for that patient. So we can alter our UV fluence. So our limitation is not the thickness in this case.
So is this available freely, the UV power calculation?
Right, yes. So it's as a URL also, and we can share the
Please.
URL with you. And
Yeah.
QR code is also there.
For my thinner corneas, I've been doing contact lens assisted C3R. I've gone very low, sometimes even 320 micron corneas I've done. But yeah, because when there's no other option.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I think Dr. Ritika can share the link with you.
Please do.
We've been
Yeah.
doing it for more than 2 years now, and we are finding very good results. And she just won the best paper in cornea session for that, and now she's going to for the same, because transplantation
Congratulations.
would always be the last option.
That's what I feel. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'll share this link with you.
Please do.
Even I've been following this customized, the custom fluence energy, and I'm getting the very nice results. I think we don't have much time. I would like to ask Dr. Romi to continue her talk, and we can finish up the session. Dr. Romi, over to you.
Hello, sir. Now I am audible.
Yes, perfect.
Okay.
Start the screen sharing. Dr. Romi, just start the video first, then start the screen sharing.
Why screen sharing has stopped?
Can't see anything. Just stop the screen sharing once.
It's okay. Now
No.
video is visible.
No, it's not
No.
visible.
Dr. Singh, if you can stop the screen sharing and then maybe play the video and then start the screen sharing.
Okay.
Yes. Now please play the video and then start the screen sharing.
Now it's visible.
Yes, yes.
Yes.
Okay. Now explain. Good morning, everyone. In this video, we presented our preferred practice pattern lockdown based on expert under the leadership of AIS. All point of entry screening and sanitization measures should be continued. Disposable 3-ply masks for all patients, attendants, and healthcare workers who come in direct contact with patients is mandatory. All waiting hall precautions with proper spacing should be continued. All patients visiting the hospital for any purpose should give a written consent in prescribed AIS format. If feasible, remote patient check-in and payment should be done. Online appointments and offline appointments to be spaced out to avoid hall congestion by using EMR. Vaccination is a mandatory for all healthcare workers, and patients visiting the hospital should also be encouraged to get vaccinated. Instrument cleaning protocols on individual patient basis should be followed. Minimum conversation with patients or colleagues should be done. For a patient with suspected COVID-19, use a separate OPD room with an isolated waiting area. Sanitize the room after patient exits, and the next such patient to be examined after 20-minute gap. Staff should change gloves for each examination. The OPD room should not be with positive pressure. N95 masks to be provided for healthcare workers engaged in patient examination and management. All slit lamps should have breath shields. Any patient with conjunctivitis to be taken directly to an isolated room and be directly seen by a doctor wearing a PPE, and no other test will be done. If the redness is not due to conjunctivitis, they will join the other patients for examination and treatment. Prescription of patient should directly reach pharmacy to minimize contact. One patient should be attended at a time. Optical frames should be disinfected in UV chamber after each trial. In
addition to routine counseling, counselors should also explain COVID-19 operating room protocols to the patients. OPD premises should be mopped every 2 hours and disinfected with UV light every week. OT entry screening and sanitization measures should be strictly followed. If possible, rapid COVID-19 antigen screening tests can be done. Standard pre-operative cleaning protocols should be maintained along with disposable 3-ply mask and cap. All necessary preparations should be done prior to the entry of patient.
I am in some conference. You talk to the counter.
Part preparation
I'm not
and
here.
surgical
I'm
draping
in
should be
conference.
done
Please, you talk.
properly. We recommend double-layered surgical drape over linen draping. If OT has been unused for a prolonged time, that fumigation as negative cultures from standard location surgery. Minimal OT personnel will minimize the risk of exposure. All the equipment should be cleaned and disinfected as per manufacturer's recommendations. Waste disposal should be as per norm. The table should be disinfected after every surgery and try to have spacing of minimum 20 minutes between 2 surgeries. The fight against COVID-19 appears to be a long one. Using preferred practices as far as possible will help us to prevail in this difficult time. Thank you.
It's my request, can we please sum it up this session because we have our next session at 11:30 in just 2 minutes.
Hello. Yeah, I think we are running out of time, and I think I would like to thank everyone, especially Dr. Pooja and all my panelists who have done a great job and make this session a huge success. I think Shivani, you can continue with the next session. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Dr. Shah. Thank you to all the chairs.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you to moderators. Thank you to all the speakers for joining.